Welcome back everyone. In this video we see amazing game. This game was FIDE World Cup 2017. So without wasting time, let's move. In this game Magnus Carlsen play with white pieces and Xiangzhi play with black pieces. So Magnus Carlsen starts with e4 and Xiangzhi replies with e5. Bishop c4, knight f6. d3, knight c6, knight f3, bishop e7, and Magnus Carlsen castles king side, and Xiangzhi also castles king side, bishop b3, d6, c3, create some space for bishop, so Magnus Carlsen can move his bishop on c2, bishop e6, and offer for bishop exchanges. But Magnus Carlsen first moved his rook on e1, queen d7, knight d2, rook b8. So if Magnus Carlsen move his bishop on a4, then Xiangzhi can play b5 and create pressure on bishop. But Magnus Carlsen first move his bishop on c2, d5, and the pressure is on center. So Magnus Carlsen continue with h3, h6, e takes d5, knight takes d5. And now you can see that Magnus Carlsen can take this pawn because this pawn has only one support. So Magnus Carlsen continue with knight takes e5. And now pressure is on queen and the same time on knight. So offer for knight exchanges. So Xiangzhi accept the offer. Knight takes knight, rook takes knight. And now bishop d6 and create pressure on rook. So Magnus Carlsen move his rook on e1. And Xiangzhi continue with bishop takes h3 and sacrifice his bishop. And Magnus Carlsen accept the bishop sacrifice. G takes bishop, queen takes h3. And now situation is critical. And in this position, if Magnus Carlsen move any other piece, then bishop h2 check comes, and you can see that checkmate comes in few moves. After king h1, bishop g3, and you can see that checkmate comes. So direct checkmate threat on h2. And in this position, if Magnus Carlsen continue with queen f3 and offer for queen exchanges, then Xiangzhi can continue with bishop h2 check. And the king has to move on h1, and after king h1, bishop g3 and again check. King g1, bishop h2 check, and after repetition, game will draw. But after queen h3, Magnus Carlsen continue with knight f1 and prevent this threat. So Xiangzhi continue with rook e8 and offer for rook exchanges. But Magnus Carlsen continue with d4 and open these bishops diagonal. So Xiangzhi continue with f5 and cut the bishops diagonal. So Magnus Carlsen continue with bishop b3 and pin this knight. So Xiangzhi support this knight with c6. So Xiangzhi, why move f5? So Xiangzhi can move his rook on f6, then rook g6 and create some pressure on king side. And Magnus Carlsen continue with f4 and cut the bishop's diagonal. So Xiangzhi continue with king h7 and free this knight. So knight can join into attack. But Magnus Carlsen take this knight. Bishop takes knight, c takes bishop and exchange his bishop with dangerous knight. And Magnus Carlsen continue with rook e3 and create pressure on queen. So Xiangzhi accept the rook. Rook takes rook, bishop takes rook. And now g5 comes. So Xiangzhi want to open this g file and create some pressure on king. So Magnus Carlsen first move his king on f2. G takes f4, and now pressure is on bishop. But Magnus Carlsen didn't save his bishop and continue with queen f3 and offer for queen exchanges. So Magnus Carlsen give back his bishop. So Bu Xiangzhi accept the bishop sacrifice. F takes bishop, knight takes e3, and again offer for queen exchanges. But Bu Xiangzhi declined the offer and continue with queen h2 and check. King f1, and Bu Xiangzhi moves rook g8, and the direct threat is rook g1 and checkmate. You can see that king has no moves. So here Magnus Carlsen has to play carefully. So Magnus Carlsen continue with queen takes f5 and check. Rook g6, king e1. So Magnus Carlsen can move his knight on f1. And Bu Xiangzhi continue with h5. Create some space for king. King d1, king h6. And now in this position you can see that Bu Xiangzi's king is very safe because these two squares are covered with bishop. So white can't give any check. So Magnus Carlsen continue with knight c2. So Magnus Carlsen can move his knight on e1 after rook g1 check. And Bu Xiangzhi continue with h4, knight e1, h3. And now this pawn is very dangerous because this pawn is only 2 moves far from promoting square. So Magnus Carlsen has to play very carefully in this position. And also you can see that Magnus Carlsen's rook can't enter in this game. So Magnus Carlsen continue with knight f3 and create pressure on queen. Queen g2, knight e1. And Bu Xiangzhi continue with queen g4 and check. And the same time offer for queen exchanges. And in this case Magnus Carlsen has to capture this queen because this queen is supportless. Queen takes queen, rook takes queen, knight f3. And in this position pause the video and think what is the next move of Bu Xiangzhi. If you find the move, congrats. So Bu Xiangzhi continue with rook g1 and check, and the same time sacrifice his rook. If Magnus Carlsen move his king, then Magnus Carlsen will lose his rook and Magnus Carlsen has to resign. And if Magnus Carlsen take this rook, then h2 comes and the pressure is on knight. And if Magnus Carlsen move his knight, then this pawn promote into queen. And after moving king, queen takes rook, and you can think that knight can trap this queen. But after knight c1, bishop f4 comes and the pressure is on knight with queen and bishop. And after moving knight, this queen can move anyway. And after h2, if Magnus Carlsen first move his king and support this knight with rook, but this pawn will promote into queen and this knight is pinned. So Magnus Carlsen can't move his knight because after moving knight, Magnus Carlsen can lose his rook. And you can see that same situation. So Bu Xiangzhi plays rook g1 and sacrifice his rook. And after rook g1, Magnus Carlsen resigned here because this knight can't capture this rook. If knight capture this rook, then this pawn will promote into queen. And if Magnus Carlsen move his king, then Magnus Carlsen lose his rook. So Magnus Carlsen resigned here. If you like the game, then please subscribe the channel for watch more these type of games.